Instrument.
We're rolling, we're live.
Is everybody ready? Are we all paying attention?
All ready to go.
Got your instrument of Miguel, you got an instrument? Miguel, you got an instrument? You got an instrument, okay.
Is that better for you? Is that okay with you?
Okay, that's fine for now. You get. No, I don't need it right now. That's good. Okay, here we go. Roger, you got everything in the kitchen under control, the oven on and stuff? Okay. Okay, we're going to start. Thank you all for being here. We're running a little bit late, but it's okay. I'm really appreciating everybody's getting here. Maybe some more people coming in later. I got a nice program set up, and we're just going to go ahead and start with the prayers on the screen. If you can't read them, just fake it. Most of you are actually learning it, so that's good. Namo Vishnu Padaya. Okay, this is the call and response. Everybody's so anxious, they all want to go jump right in. We appreciate the enthusiasm, but it gets a little hard for me to do it if you all start singing, and then I don't know who's leading the program here, okay? So, I will sing it, and then you all will follow. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namane. Now you go. Namo Vishnu Padaya Namaste Saraswati Devam Gauravani Pracharne Nivashesha Sunyavadi Paschatadeshatarane. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Yadvaita Radha Sivasari Bhakta-vrinda. Jaya Shri Krishna. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Radha Sivasari Bhakta-vrinda. Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Radha Sivasari Bhakta-vrinda. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare
All day long.
I stopped a little early because I wanted to introduce this other song, which I just realized I don't have it on the computer yet. And I'll try to get that fixed up next time. We're just going to spend another maybe 5 minutes singing this other prayer. This one that's over here on the fireplace.
What if you put it right there in front of the...
Miguel, you want to do that for us? I'll try to get this, just put this sign right here in front of the television set. On the floor. That'd be good.
I can't see it.
This way
This is fine. It's not covering this.
How's that working out for you, Larry?
Yeah,
Here, we can put it on this.
I'll get it.
But just put it in a little middle. Put it in the middle.
But, okay,
Just
everybody.
lean it against the.
Okay, Gary, you're going to have to move.
He's got to throw peanuts. He's always throwing peanuts. Okay, that's good. No, don't put it up that high. Put it over. No, I don't want you to block the screen. Just put it over where the door is, and then everybody. Robert, just put the box over next to the door and move it up against.
And then it gets the door.
Yeah, that's good. Right there. That's it. Now put it so it's not blocking the television.
Oh, because you're going to do that?
I don't want it to block the
Oh,
television.
Because it's not a good thing?
Well, because he might put something on it.
Exactly. Just move it over a little bit.
Oh, just a little. I see.
There you go. And that way everybody will be able to see it. Okay, now that we navigated that problem.
I like it where it was.
I will try to bring this up. I probably do have it on the computer, but it'll take me a couple minutes to find it, and I don't want to put everybody through that, so we're just going to read it from the sign here. For any of you who actually dial in or call in or watch any of the temples or have been to any of our temples, they always sing this in the morning before they do the Bhagavad class. And I just was inspired that I thought maybe it would be nice to give everybody a chance to do it, and then at the end we'll read the thing at the end here. Prabhupada said this is one of his most favorite little songs. It's just a little short thing, but I'll read it here for you now. Krishna is a lover of Radha. He displays many amorous pastimes in the groves of Vrindavan. He is a lover of the cowherd maidens of Vraja, the holder of the great hill named Govardhan, the beloved son of Mother Yasoda, the delighter of the inhabitants of Vraja, and he wanders in the forests along the bank of the river Yamuna. So it's very simple, but it's actually very deep if you allow the mood of the song to step in. So again, I will read it. I'll sing the first line, and then everybody follow, and we'll just kind of flow through it. Not going to be a long time doing this, but we'll just work it out together. So the way this goes is like this. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. How you sing? Jaya Bihari
do a slower tune.
Okay, I'll do it a little slower. It's my first time too, so. Jaya Radha. We'll get Brajarani to do it. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Giridvaradari. Yasoda Nandana Praja Jana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Yamuna Tira Vanachari.
Kunja Bihari.
Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari.
Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari.
Gopi Jana Vallabha Giridvaradari.
Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana.
Yasoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana.
Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana.
Yasoda Nandana Braja Jana Ranjana.
Jamuna Tira Vanachari.
Yamuna Tira Vanachari.
Jamuna Tira Vanachari.
Yamuna Tira Vanachari.
Wow, that was great for first time. Give yourself a big clap.
All right.
We need one more. We're just kidding.
We'll do it again. We'll do it again next
Okay,
week.
okay.
Okay,
Okay.
but the thing is, we need to slow down because we're all off in our speed.
It's usually what it is around here.
It's called chaos.
Anyhow, it's the first time we did it, so each week we'll do it again, and we'll get a little better at it as time goes on.
It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
Would you want to say something, Harry?
Oh my goodness.
So, yeah.
Can you explain for us the significance of this mantra?
Okay, well, I'll just read it again, and I'll explain it a little as I read it. Okay, so it says, Krishna is the lover of Radha. He displays many amorous pastimes in the grove of Vrindavan. Okay, Radha, when we say Radha Krishna, we're referring to Radha. Radha is Krishna's female expansion as the highest form of God, okay? And they're always eternally enamored by each other. It's a very high level of just, try to imagine pure love that's totally giving and without any kind of personal agenda going on.
Completely unconditional.
Which
So
is-
it's a divine couple's love. This whole song is a deep meditation of Krishna when he came down to Vrindavan, or even in the spiritual world. Basically, that's what he does. He's just walking around, roving with his girlfriends and boyfriends, all his devotees who love him very much, dancing with them, and then he's lifting the big Govardhan hill to protect his devotees. So basically, this is all about his pastime, how he's protecting his devotees. He's having loving relationships with his devotees, and everything's very sweet, very beautiful.
Yeah, also notice how many times the word Vraja is in here. Vraja is the city or the town or the village of Vrindavan. So it's actually the same name, Brajarani. It's spelled a little different when we bring it to English. Here it's spelled with a V, but it's very common that it's spelled both ways, V or B. So Brajarani, Rani meaning the queen, so Braj or Vraja, which is being used here, is the city of Vrindavan. So actually when we talk about Radha, Brajarani's name, where she's the servant of Brajarani, which is the consort of Radha. So that's what her name actually means. So I just want you to see it. I read it 2 or 3 times. He's a cowherd. He is the lover of the cowherd maidens and Raja. So that's all what the 10th canto is all about. We don't talk about that too much in the early stages because we tend to overlap our ideas of intimacies with our people at our level. So we're definitely not going to get into that deep kind of a thing here at this program because we're talking to the general public. But as you mature, you might be interested in reading some of that stuff. It's in the 10th canto. It's also nicely presented in our book called the Krishna book. And that's Prabhupada translated the Krishna book when he was really early in the days when he first came to America because he didn't know how long he was going to live and he wanted to make sure that information got brought out. So we have several volumes of that. Did you want to add something, Michelle?
Well, I just want to add to that just as we experience in human life, what might be the best of emotion or the best of connection with another party. So try to imagine that to the nth degree, without imperfection, without anger, without nonsense. So this is what is being discussed here.
Thank you. Okay, so with that, we're going to move on to the program here. And this is why I wanted, somebody could take this down, then we're kind of done with it. Put it back where it was. I'll do it. Just put it back where it was. I will try to get that up on the computer so we don't have to do this next time. Okay, so how many people know what we're discussing tonight? Got a couple here. Hey, good one. He's paying attention.
That's a safe place to be. Safe answer.
Close. That's part of it.
Obviously, Arjuna's experience.
Maybe Ferd might notice. You
keep-
must have noticed it. Ferd's your first time. Did you notice what the topic for tonight's discussion?
How did you find your way here tonight? Oh, you're the one who was on Meetup. Okay, great. Thank you for coming. It's very nice. Where do you live?
I live in Ventura.
Great. Well, we hope you'll have a good time tonight. Okay. Anyhow, yeah, so the topic tonight is bewildering ignorance or absolute knowledge. So before we get too far into this, does anybody want to make a comment about bewildering ignorance? We are all experiencing it quite a bit, unless you're really an elevated soul. What comes to your mind when I talk about bewildering ignorance? Kali Yuga in general, yeah. I mean, the whole state of affairs is pretty messy.
Making bad choices, no one's better.
Making bad choices instead of better.
But you knew better.
When you knew better, that's probably those are the worst ones. That's a good point. Usually, when you're ignorant, you're in delusion, or you're in denial, or you don't even know what you're making a bad decision until you later find out it didn't work out the way you wanted it to. Right? Anybody else? What is bewildering?
Well, of course, in this particular body, we have senses that only show us so much. We go from infrared to ultraviolet. We don't see much beyond that. Some people don't even see within that, and it goes on. So we're working with what we call incomplete data sets.
Limited senses. Okay, Gloria, did you want to add something?
Yes, association with true devotees versus association with people who are in trauma, drama, and being influenced by chaos.
Basically, completely under the modes of material nature. And what are the modes of material nature?
Ignorance.
That's one of them. There's 3. Come on, we go through this all. That's the second one. Third one, okay? But we did them backwards. Usually goodness, passion, and ignorance, okay? Miguel, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I want to say that some people can be very smart, like scientists, but also be in the mode of ignorance.
That's right. And that's a very good point, that frequently people in the normal, conditional, material world might have a whole long list of credentials, PhDs, they might have written 30 books, they give lectures all over the world, they get big, even maybe some big money when they come give a lecture at a university, and yet when it gets around to knowledge of the absolute, that's the other side of the formula tonight, they don't have a clue. Lori?
Because they're scientists, they want to take credit.
They want to be the gods.
Yeah. So, and over each other. So they are very scientific, and they want all kinds of credit.
Yeah, we also want to
They
be.
don't want God.
But we do
They
want
want
to be.
numbers.
We do want to be careful. We're talking in general terms here.
Not all.
Not all scientists are like that, but there does tend to be a trend. And Prabhupada used to say science should be used to prove the existence of God. Unfortunately, there's a pattern that seems to be going on nowadays where science is being used to disprove the existence of God. We don't have an objection with the scientific process so much. In fact, the whole process of Krishna consciousness, we would say very strongly, is a scientific process. It's just not something you can put on a table in front of you with test tubes, and then you isolate all the particles and you mix hydrogen and oxygen. You go, hey, look, it made water. Okay? This science is science that's going on inside. You have to do the same thing. You have to isolate all of the conditioning things that are messing your head up, or conditioning. We call it conditioning or psychological trauma if you want to get down into the nuts and bolts of it. But if you really want to see the science of Krishna consciousness work, you have to do the same thing. You have to start isolating out all of the distracting factors, which is basically a tremendous amount of what's going on in the material world.
And also practicing.
And practicing the process. Process of, like, if you have to heat something up, or some of these very highly volatile chemicals, or part of, what do you call it, on the periodic chart. The last ones down there, they only live, these highly radioactive activities. They only what do you call it? Elements only are around for very, very, like, microseconds.
And then it goes to hydrogen.
But the point I'm making is that you have to have all the conditions there for these things to even occur. So the same what Bhadrani is saying is you have to have all the conditions there if you want to see the Krishna conscious process occur. You have to be willing to engage in that process, which begins by what? Hearing, chanting, remembering, and engaging in some devotional service. Now, Krishna doesn't just eating prasadam, that's all part of it. Anything else, Prashant? Did you want to say something?
Well, the process to get to the mode of goodness in your life is to set aside those things that aren't included there. So things that draw you to passion or ignorance.
Step away from it. Right. You have to be willing to give up the things that are going to then consume your time and consume your consciousness ultimately.
Addiction.
Yeah, so that's one of them. Yeah, that's real problems nowadays. People have all sorts of addictions. We're not just talking about, of course, obviously we're talking about the heavy addictions. We're also talking about the minor addictions. Like, you got to watch your favorite TV show on Wednesday night. I mean, I think about it. I mean, if any of us who've worked in the working world, there's people that are like that, and they're all, or how about sports? I missed the game, or I missed whatever it is.
How about chocolate?
Or how about chocolate?
I got addicted to CNN, and it was all about, politics. And it was so bad that I got rid of the channel.
There you go.
I dumped it.
That's what's referred to in Ashtanga Yoga as accepting those things which are favorable, and yama and niyama, which means rejecting those things which are unfavorable, rejecting those things that are going to become problematic and interfere with our spiritual growth. Okay, so that's bewildering ignorance. It's going on around us all the time. And if you want to be free of it, you have to make a conscious decision that I want to be free of it. It doesn't just go away. It doesn't just kind of step out of the way for you. You have to decide. What do they say? It's like if you take certain things out of, nature abhors vacuum. If you remove something out of your daily life and you don't replace it with something better, then some other nonsense thing will fill in. So the Krishna conscious process is actually the process of removing those things which are unfavorable and now introducing things that are favorable. So, for example, Lori said we eat prasadam. We're going to have prasadam in a little bit here. I think you'll all really enjoy it. So that prasadam is replacing what? Food that's not prasadam, which in many cases in America, that could be some really not so pleasant things. Like we always eat vegetarian food here. Because, frankly, non-vegetarian food is just really not that nice. And we're finding out now more and more a lot of these illnesses, cancer, our hardening of the arteries, right? Several, heart diseases, especially cancer. The colon cancer
It's
is
acidic. All meat products are acidic.
right. I don't want to turn this whole discussion on meat, but the thing is that now the scientists are starting to go, wait a minute, there's a correlation here. And in the last 100 years, since meat became available to just the average common citizen, which was not the case hundreds of years ago, when only the wealthy people could afford to have animals and have beef any kind of meat on their table. But since now it's become subsidized by the American population, by the government, and it's made it so anybody can go out and have a hamburger anytime they want, now we're seeing a tremendous rise in colon cancer and all sorts of these illnesses. So they call it the animal's revenge. Okay, you want to eat us? We'll get you. We'll get you on the operating table. Okay, so with that, let's now talk about the absolute truth. And sometimes people have a problem with the absolute truth. And especially here in OJAI, there's all sorts of people talking about all sorts of things. And some people try to make the argument there is no absolutes. There's absolutely no absolutes. It's like, well, was that an absolute statement? Okay. So let's talk about that. So what we're going to do, this is the verse that I picked for this discussion tonight, partially because it covers a lot of this material. And this is one of these double verses. We'll only do the first part of it. Just for the sake of time. We like to always chant one verse. So we'll just do the first part here. And we'll go over the Sanskrit, and we'll read the whole thing here. And now keep in mind, this is chapter 10 of the Bhagavad Gita, and it happens to be verses 12 and 13. Now keep in mind, chapter 10, texts 7 through 11 are what's referred to as the seed verses of the Bhagavad Gita. These are, if you had to take the entire Bhagavad Gita and boil it down to its essence, and in fact some people would say, the sages would say, if you had to take the entire Krishna conscious philosophy and boil it down into the shortest little sutras possible, it would be the 4 verses that come just before this. Okay, and I'll just read those real quickly. Most of you have heard me. We've had programs on this before, but just so everybody can appreciate what we're talking about, I'll read them really quickly. Otherwise, everybody's going to be wondering, well, what are those verses? And then we're going to read the next verse. We're going to study the verse after it. Let's see, verse 7. And these are, you can see they're somewhat lengthy purports. But it's worth knowing these 4 verses because it really does have the essence. Let me see if it starts with 7. Of the whole. Oh, no, it starts with 8. I'm sorry. So what are the 4 seed verses? Aham sarvasya prabhavo matta sarvam bhavartate iti matva bhajante mam bhuttabhava samanvita. I am the source. This is Krishna speaking, of course. I am the source of all spiritual and material worlds. Let this sink in, because this is core stuff. Everything emanates from me. The wise who perfectly know this engage in my devotional service and worship me with all their hearts. So Krishna's saying, when you push all the day-to-day stuff aside and you really get down to what's really important, right there. The wise who know this perfectly engage in my devotional service and worship me with all their hearts. Then he comes in and he says, Machchita matkata prana bodayantas paraspara katayantas chamam nityam tasyanti cha ramanti cha. The thoughts of my pure devotees dwell in me. Their lives are fully devoted to my service, and they derive great satisfaction and bliss from always enlightening one another and conversing about me. And that's what we do here on Tuesday nights, every other week on Tuesday nights. We're offering something here. You're not going to get this on CNN. You're not going to get this on the radio, not at least anywhere in our broadcast district. You can find it on the internet if you have a computer. You can find a lot of really good material about Krishna on the computer. But if you want to get a live discussion and get the Association of Devotees and have your questions answered, you got to come to something like this, and that's why we do this program. Next thing is Kesham Satatam Yuktanam Bhajatam Pritipurvakam Dadami Buddhi Yogam Tam Yenam Amupatyantite. He says here, to those who are constantly devoted to serving me with love, I give the understanding by which they can come to me. So we on our own effort are really pretty helpless. Like Vashanta was saying, how there's a range of visual of waves from infrared to ultraviolet. We only see a little portion in the middle of visible light. And yet there's all sorts of stuff going on. There's radio waves going on right now. There's all sorts of things flying through the room. We're not even aware of it. Harry?
Also, I think in this verse is also important because Krishna is also saying if we're reading, we're speaking, and we're singing, he will reveal more of this absolute to us.
Absolutely. That's one of the most core essential parts of our whole philosophy. Krishna reveals himself. This is part of what we were saying earlier, based on our willingness to surrender to doing something that he's recommending here in the Gita or anywhere. Basically, we call it devotional service. So when you come, some people, Gabrielle is here this morning, helping us cut up some of the fruit for the fruit salad that we're going to have in a little bit. You know, so when you step forward, you do a little service, and you stick your neck out, you talk to somebody about Krishna, you just getting here, instead of going and doing one of those other distracting things, that's devotional service. Eating prasadam is devotional service. And as you get more involved, and as you go, hey, I can do this. This is not so bad. Some people have this attitude. We encounter this all the time. People go, oh no, I like the devotees. I could never do that. I could never do that. Well, what can you do? Whatever little you can do, start with that. And then it'll grow. It'll get more, and you'll go, hey, you'll get a taste. They call it a taste, a ruchi. Taste.
Bill, if you can't be a kitty, you can't be a lion. Start with being a kitty.
Yeah, that's one of Ed's philosophy for tonight. Okay, but we'll go for that. You can't be a whale, be a minnow, right? But at least be in the game, be on the board. You know, be engaged. Do something, even if it's just, you know, if you're laying on your back, you know, and you can't get up, at least think of Krishna instead of some other silly thing. Okay, so the next seed verse here is, oops, we went past it. What, number 11? I think it's the one that I use for our motto. To show them special mercy, I, meaning Krishna, dwelling in their hearts. What does he do? Listen to this. He destroys with the shining lamp of knowledge the darkness of ignorance. Okay? We don't just try to mechanically push the ignorance out the door. That's the Buddhist program. Okay, I'm shutting down my senses and I'm going to meditate, and there's no ego and there's no desires and there's nothing, and I'm just going to be. Nope, because nature abhors a vacuum, and the thoughts are going to come in, and then the mind's going to start wandering, and then all sorts of funny things start happening. The Krishna conscious process does not advise that. There's nothing wrong with meditating per se, but that in and of itself will get you, if you're lucky, 0. Usually it gets you a negative. The Krishna consciousness will actually get you into the positive numbers, okay? And this is what he's saying here. Well, how does he destroy the darkness of ignorance? He does it with the shining lamp of knowledge. That knowledge is what we're doing when we come here on Tuesday nights. And we take the time to set aside the rest of our life and just sit down and listen. And chew on it and take it home and go, yeah, I never thought about that before. Or maybe there's some problem you have with something we say, then ask somebody. Say, I'm having a problem with this or the other thing. Okay, fine, let's get it out. One of the things that we like to say in our program here is if you have a question, we will try to do the best we can to get you a real answer. We won't dodge the answer. We won't try to pretend like we know. We'll find the answer for you because Veda means knowledge. It has those answers. So bring them on. We like the questions. Okay, so with that, so now that we know what those 4 seed verses are, now Arjuna is going to turn around and he's going to say something really profound. And what does he say? He says, Arjuna said, now keep in mind, this is the whole, we're getting the beginning of the opulence of the absolute. When Krishna is going to lay out all of his opulences, and he's starting it with those 4 seed verses. But Arjuna is now saying, what? You are the supreme personality of Godhead. He's having this realization, and he's sharing it with us. In case anybody's questioning, and a lot of people do question who's the guy who's reading this Bhagavad Gita. Some of us went to the Hindu temple a couple months ago where the guy tried to say Krishna doesn't exist. He's talking about you. Yeah, okay. Well, Arjuna is saying he does exist, and he's giving a definition. You are the supreme personality of Godhead, the ultimate abode, the purest, the absolute truth. Remember, that's the other side of the discussion tonight. Bewildering ignorance, it's all over the place. But if you want the absolute truth, you got to pay attention, and we're going to offer it to you. Krishna's offering it to us here. The purest, the absolute. You are the eternal, transcendental, original person. God is a person. He's not just a concept, and he's certainly not a white light. That's part of it, but he's more than that. He's not a void, and he's not, some made-up idea. He's giving all sorts of information. You are the original person, the unborn. These are definitions of God. The greatest. The guy who says, put your name in where Krishna is like, well, I'm not the greatest. I mean, maybe there's some people walking around thinking like that, and they're usually the most obnoxious people, not the greatest people. Okay? All of the great sages, and now Arjuna's even taking it one step further, and he's saying, this is my opinion, but even my opinion, maybe some people will doubt my opinion. They'll say, oh, Arjuna's in delusion. He's having a breakdown. He's in the middle of this battle, and he doesn't know what's going on, and he's freaking out, and he's going to Krishna. So they might reject Arjuna's opinion. But he says, no. The great sages, such as Narada, okay, Asita, Devala, and Vyas confirm this truth about you. Now, I'm not just the only one saying it. These other people who are highly respected, if you actually study the Vedas, if you read the books, and you educate yourself, you realize that these are not just fly-by-night, nickel and dime people speaking at Meditation Mountain here up in OJAI every other week. These are very highly learned, very scholarly, and very devoted people who really have a handle on what's going on, and they're living their life in such a way that they're clearly got their life under control. They're not flopping around having a problem every time they turn around with whatever issue it is in their life. Okay? These are extraordinary people. And now you yourself are declaring it to me. Krishna just said that. I am the source of everything. So he's saying it. Arjuna's confirming it. The sages are confirming it. So this is the absolute truth. Okay, so just for the sake of the program here, let us go through and we're just going to read. Let's do the Sanskrit here first. And then we'll put it all together. Most of us are familiar. I'm only going to read it up to the Adi Devam Ajam Vibhu right there. And the rest of it's the second half, so we'll just read it up there. Okay, so it goes like this. Although before we do this, we should say the obligatory Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Okay, somebody other than Vishanta, why do we say that mantra? Laura?
Because Vasudeva wrote, he was the literary incarnation of Krishna.
Very good.
So
he wrote the Vedas, so
right.
As respect for him and acknowledging that without his devotional service is quite an extraordinary devotional service. He wrote the Vedic literature. Without that, we would be flopping around in utter ignorance all the time. That's the bewildering side of life. We would be bewildered all the time. Later, we get a chance, maybe Robert can share with us what happened last week when I went to the Krishnamurti Foundation. Big scientist there. Basically, he was trying to use his intelligence to disprove the existence of God. And when he got done with his 45-minute lecture, I asked him essentially what Vishanta was saying. Well, you're a very smart man here, but you have a propensity to cheat. You have a propensity to make mistakes. You have imperfect senses, and you have the propensity to fall into illusion. So how sure are you about your conclusions? And keep in mind the topic of the discussion was spiritual honesty. Well, how can you be so sure of your conclusions? And it was interesting. He said a few things that kind of like, I think he was trying to buy a little bit of time while he was trying to figure out what he was going to say. But he actually did say, he said, it's true. Mankind might just be eternally condemned to be ignorant all the time. Because if he has no access to the Vedas, that's the only conclusion he can come to. What's that?
He was happy with that conclusion?
Well, he was strutting around, like, showing how honest he was to admit that, yeah, maybe we're all condemned to be ignorant forever. Okay, if you're happy with that, be happy with your ignorance. I'm not happy with that. Of course, you've got to be willing to do something that a lot of people, not just scientists, have a real hard time doing, and that is saying, well, if I can't figure it out on my own, how am I going to know? I'm going to have to go to something outside of me. And it's understandable. It's very understandable why people are reluctant to do that nowadays, because there's so many cheaters and so many charlatans and so many bogus carpetbaggers and people shucking and jiving and doing whatever they want to do in order to make a buck and then run away and leave you standing there, $10 broke. Okay? We don't charge anything for this program. We just let Krishna guide us.
I want to mention something. I was watching a documentary on YouTube, the latest physics. They call it M theory.
M theory,
and they talk about the parallel universe. And some of the theory, they're thinking that maybe there's verses like bubbles.
Yes.
So somehow it's in the VEDIC.
It's starting to join up.
And the Brahma, I think once
multiple
you read
universes.
that the universes are bubbles.
Yes.
And it's kind of, I don't know.
It's very interesting. What you're saying is science in its own stumbling and fumbling way are starting to say a lot of things that we've been reading in the Vedas and has been there for thousands of years. And then what was taking you guys so long? We don't need to stumble and bumble our way along.
Well, also you take the procession theory came early on in the Srimad Bhagavatam, and they just really started discussing it, 15 years ago. Not just our own planet.
Right. By the way, for those, before you go, Miguel, I think we have an extra copy of Easy Journey to Other Planets. And Prabhupada wrote this like in the 1950s. And he covers a lot of because in the 1950s, after the atomic bomb and all the atomic research really started becoming mainstream physics, it was a hot topic. Everybody's going like, whoa, what did we just tap into? So Prabhupada wrote a book called Easy Journey to Other Planets, and he talks about how a lot of the stuff that back then, 50 years ago, that they were starting to realize about molecular energy and quantum theories and Heisenberg's uncertainty principles. In fact, Heisenberg, in our Wisdom of the Wise slideshow, Heisenberg actually made a comment. He said, I was wrestling with, I'm trying to figure out whether a particle is like a wave, like light, or a particle down on the molecular level. And he kept saying, on one hand, it behaves like a particle, on the other hand, it behaves like a wave. And he kept on going back and forth. And he said, well, how can be one and not... Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. But and my point is that he said he was really up against the wall about this and just really wrestling with, rational science. And then he said, I read something in the Vedas, and the next morning I put two and two together and I realized what he came up with, which is highly regarded and respected, is Heisenberg's uncertainty principle. You might have heard of it. And he goes, well, there's a new philosophy or a new awareness of physics that when you get down on the molecular level, things aren't the same way they are in this dimension. And guess what? Vedas talk about that too.
The scientific research uses extensive mathematical equations.
Yes.
And so their language is extensive mathematical equations.
Yes.
And they are coming to the multi-universe.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
That's the recent one.
Yes.
Just 10 years ago, they start talking about, they call it M theory. This is just the latest one.
Yeah. Like through the wormhole, one of their last things, I just watched it today, is there a God? And there's many scientists. The one was one guy who moved to Hawaii. He searched, but he came up with the last theory but one of the scientists became a priest, and everybody else was anti-spiritual.
Well, Harriman.
Anyhow, that's not uncommon. That's not uncommon.
Harriman's the guy in Hawaii they're talking about.
Okay, I don't want to get
Anyway,
too.
sorry.
I don't want to get too distracted. I like people thinking and commenting, but we don't want to get too distracted. We're not going to get through the program tonight. So let's go ahead and do the Sanskrit. We've all done this before. I'll read it, and you guys follow, and then we'll do the verse, and then we'll get on with the rest of the program. So it goes like this: Arjuna uvacha. Arjuna said, Param, supreme. Brahma, truth. Param, supreme. Dhamma, sustenance. Pavitram, pure. Paramam, supreme. Bhavan, you. Purusham, personality. Shashvatam, eternal. Divyam, transcendental. Adi Devam, the original Lord. Ajam, unborn. Vibhum, the greatest. I'm going to stop there because we're only going to chant that part together. So I'll do the first part and then I'll do the second part when we get done. So, Arjuna uvacha, Param, Brahma, Param, Dhamma, Param Brahma, Param Dhamma, Pavitram, Paramam, Bhavam, Pavitram, Paramam, Bhavam, Purusham, Shashvatam, Divyam, Purusham, Shashvatam, Divyam, Adidevam, Ajam, Vibhum, Adidevam, Ajam, Vibhum, Arjuna vacha, Param Brahma, Param Dhamma, Pavitram, Paramam Bhavam, Purusham, Shashvatam, Divyam, Adidevam, Ajam, Vibhum, Arjuna uvacha, Param Brahma, Param Dhamam, Pavitram, Paramam Bhavam, Purusham, Shashvatam, Divyam, Adidevam, Ajam, Vibhum. Okay, who would like to try it on their own? Come on, somebody can do it. Vishanta Shoman, do it.
Arjuna vacha,
Arjuna vacha,
Param Brahma, Param Dhamma,
Param Brahma, Param Dhamma,
Pavitram Paramam Vivam,
Paratram, Paramam, Vibam,
Purusham Shashvatam Avyam,
Purusham, Shashvatam, Divyam,
Adidevam Ajam Vibhum,
Adidevam, Ajam, Vibam. Very good. Mark, you want to try it?
Sure. Arjuna uvacha,
Arjuna vacha,
Param Brahma, Param Dhamma,
Param Brahma, Param Dhamma,
Pavitram Paramam Bhavam,
Pavitram, Paramam Bhavam,
Parusam Savatam Divyam,
Purusham, Shashvatam, Divyam,
Adidevam Ajam Vibhum.
Adidevam, Ajam, Vibam. Very good. Anybody else want to try it? Okay. All right. Then the next part of it is Ahustam Rajasa Sarve Deva Shrir Naradastata Asito Devalo Vasya Sayam Jaiva Bhavishyame. So once again, the whole verse goes, Arjuna said, you are the Supreme Personality of God at the ultimate abode, meaning the final destination. The purest, the absolute truth. You are the eternal, transcendental, original person, the unborn, the greatest. All the great sages such as Narada, Asita, Devala, and Vyasa confirm this truth about you. and now you yourself are declaring it to me. Okay, let's do the purport real quickly. There's a lot of stuff in here. In these two verses, Supreme Lord gives a chance to the Mayavadi philosopher. Here it is clear that the Supreme is different from the individual soul. So the Mayavadi philosophers are the ones who think that we need to merge into, usually they talk about the white light, but it can be any flavor of that. Merge into godliness, merge into the one. And Prabhupada's saying, And Krishna's saying, Actually, in the earlier part of the Bhagavad Gita, he says, never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you, nor all these kings, nor in the future shall any of us cease to be. Krishna's saying that to Arjuna. So there's no question of merging. He's saying, for here it is clear that the supreme difference from that the supreme is different from the individual soul. Arjuna, after hearing the essential 4 verses of the Bhagavad Gita, we just read them in this chapter, became completely freed from all doubts and accepted Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He at once boldly declares, you are Parabrahman, or Parabrahma, Brahma meaning the highest, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And previously Krishna stated that he is the originator of everything and everyone. Every demigod and every human being is dependent on him. Men and demigods, out of ignorance, think that they're absolute and independent of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. We see that a lot. We see that a lot. In fact, if we have time here, I'll tell the story about how many people have familiar. I know Prashanta knows this, but we just read it the other day together. How many people know the story of Lord Brahma and how he got a little bit too strong for himself, too proud for himself, and he thought he was going to play a little game on Krishna and decided to take away all his cowherd friends and boys. Harry knows.
I've been watching the temple program in LA, and I've been reading from those verses.
Okay.
Out of the last week.
Okay, so maybe
That's actually a good story of bewilderment, too.
Yeah, that's why I have it notes here on it. Lori.
Another story. Rama takes all the cowherd boys and hides them.
Yeah.
So Krishna, in his divine aspect, he brings all the cowherd boys down, and they're all Vishnu, all expansions of Krishna. And so he can go to the town and have his cowherd boys, so nobody knows. So in that sense, Krishna was much greater than.
Thank you. I was going to tell the story, but you just did it in a nutshell. The question, my question for you is, did you read that, or where did you get that from? Do you have the Krishna book?
Yeah, Krishna book.
Okay, good. Okay, maybe I'll add a little more detail in a couple minutes here. But the point I'm making, and this is exactly the reason why we introduced this discussion, or I was asking about it, is because Prabhupada's saying here is that men and demigods, it's not just going on at our level here, men and demigods, out of what? Ignorance, bewildering ignorance, think that they are absolute and independent of the Supreme Personality of Godhead.
Pride.
Well, there's all sorts of reasons, but that's probably the biggest one, okay? We get proud, and sometimes we see people even here, they're strolling around thinking they're so important, and we all ought to be listening to them, right? And sometimes some of these people become very successful, and they might have great speaking tours, and they might make a lot of money selling their 45 minutes on the internet. There's people in town doing that, in fact. And they look on a material, mundane level, they look like they're incredibly successful and very good at what they do. Unfortunately, if it hasn't got anything to do with Krishna, it is called asat. It is useless both in this life and the next. And in fact, there's a wonderful verse on this right here. Let me just read it for you. Ashada hatam datam tapas tapam kritam jayat asa ityachte parta nacha tat pretya nohiha. Listen carefully. Anything done as a sacrifice, charity, penance, without faith in the Supreme, O son of Prita, is impermanent. It is called asat, and it is useless both in this life and the next. Okay? That's a powerful quote right out of the Bhagavad Gita. This is chapter 17. We're getting towards the end, and Krishna's reminding Arjuna, all these other bewildering forms of ignorance that are out there, they will suck your time, they will suck your consciousness, they will suck your energy. And he's saying, but unless it helps you become more aware of your relationship with me, it is asat. Sat meaning true. Ad negates it. It is without truth. And Prabhupada really punches it and he says, it is useless. In fact, it's worse than useless. It's dragging you down. It's a negative. And it is useless both in this life and the next life. Not just now, because guess what? It's going to influence your next life. And you're going to get on that stairway going, that, what do they call it, the stairway to heaven? That also goes to hell if you get in the wrong direction. Right? If you go in the wrong direction, you're not going to heaven, you're going somewhere else. Okay. That ignorance is removed perfectly by the discharge of devotional service. That's powerful. I don't know why it's highlighted. Probably there's a whole other lecture to that. This has already been explained in the previous verse by the Lord. Now, by His grace, Arjuna is accepting Him as the supreme truth in concordance with the Vedic injunction. It is not that because Krishna is Arjuna's intimate friend, Arjuna is flattering him by calling him the Supreme Personality of God as the absolute truth. Whatever Arjuna says in these two verses is confirmed by Vedic truth. You also keep in mind, in today's world today, people say all sorts of things. They say things to flatter you. They say things to get a discount on their automobile purchase. They say things just to get a free ticket or a ride. People say all sorts of stuff. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do that. People say it here. Oh, I'm going to read this. And they don't do it. I'm going to come to the program. They don't come. Right? But that's not the way the Vedic culture was and what the word integrity is all about. If you have integrity, you don't suck up to people. You are who you are, and you behave on a level which is consistent with what you are. Ultimately, people do what they're going to do. And when they voice one thing and they do something else, then it kind of becomes obvious that they're not in integrity. So Prabhupada's making this point here. Arjuna's not just sucking up to Krishna. He's a man of integrity. He would never do that. He's a Kshatriya. He's never going to say something just to get an advantage. He's going to speak what's true. And if somebody has an issue or somebody's doubting that, then he's going to say, he says here that, Arjuna is flattering. He says, whatever Arjuna says in these two verses is confirmed by the Vedic truth. It's all through the Vedic literatures. If you really want to study the Vedic, you don't like the way we're presenting it, go read them for yourself.
I think the balance is, in this level of knowledge, is that there is a check and balance. It's called Guru, Sadhu, Shastra.
Good point.
So the Shastra is the information as practiced by those practicing participants of the Sadhu. And the Guru confirms, so that between the three, if they're in agreement, then that's pretty solid information. If there's a fallout, then it will get sorted out
right
quick.
They won't be in
What
concurrence.
is it, Guru?
Guru is the teacher. Sadhu is the body of holy people that have come through history. The Acharyas, the other great saintly personality. And Shastra is scripture. Okay, so that's how we know what's true.
Sadhu is surrender.
Any one of them is not necessarily going to do it on its own. Because there's people who have written new scriptures. Anybody's heard of the Course in Miracles? Guess what? That's a new scripture. Okay, anybody heard the Rancha book? Nobody really knows what it is or where it came from, but it's not Vedic. So there's script, you could follow those scriptures, but they're not in concurrence with a good teacher, and they're certainly not in concurrence with the sadhus. Okay? In fact, we see... what's that?
Which sadhu someone might say? There are other saintly people it's in concurrence with.
Well, here's an example of the sadhus going wacky. Okay? Everybody know David Koresh from Waco? Wacko Waco. All right? He claimed to be an incarnation of Jesus or something like this. And okay, but he was preaching from the Bible. Okay? Same with Jim Jones down in Guyana. He was using the Bible. He had a book that we recognize as a legitimate religious scripture, but he wasn't in concurrence with what the other sadhus have said. The great St. Francis of Assisi or Thomas Aquinas or any of the great Christian scholars, they all would say, no, Wacko, you're David Koresh, you're Wacko. So there you could see he broke. He wasn't. All three weren't lined up. He wasn't. He immediately should be rejected. And the same thing's true here. If you come here and you hear me saying something that you don't see in the scriptures, that's why I'm so careful to try to put it right there and say, look, here it is. You guys see it for yourself. And if I start saying something that's not consistent with what you hear from the other devotees, then you go, I don't know about Maheshwar over there and all that. But hopefully, of course there's always little varieties and difference of opinion, but the mainstream core teachings, theoretically, in all of our Krishna conscious movement should be consistent everywhere. Okay.
Just for clarity, the sadhus in the Christian belief system would be like Matthew, Paul, Peter.
Yeah, all the
Thomas,
disciples.
John.
Yeah, those would be acceptable.
Yeah, and currently those who would be living in, let's say, a monastery, living a monastic life.
Right.
That would be, because they're living according to Scripture.
Theoretically, we would like to think that any relatively educated ordained or any ordained minister who's got a reasonable congregation. And the reason why I say that is because there's been some really bizarre ministers who've come through OJAI and they don't even really have much of a congregation. And that's because they're not meeting this standard. They're not meeting the standard of Guru. They're teaching some wacky version of what they think the Bible says.
Is not according to Matthew.
Right.
Translation is off.
Yeah, right. Okay, so let me push on here, and then we're going to read something in a minute about that. Vedic injunctions affirm that only one who takes to devotional service to the Supreme Lord can understand him, whereas others cannot. And this is not to be interpreted or read in a derogatory means. This is just a matter of this is the way it works, folks. We're not trying to leverage anybody. We're not trying to say, you don't do devotional service, you're going to go to hell forever. No. You'll go to whatever degree you're showing some genuine commitment. Krishna will reward you accordingly. But if you really want to understand, then you have to engage in devotional service. Otherwise, you're just another flaky person. It's just, you're more interested in your own ideas and your own wandering here and wandering there. And whatever somebody said your addiction was chocolate. You're too busy worrying about when the next chocolate bar is going to be on the grocery stores instead of whether you want to study Krishna consciousness. What's that?
Well, it's just after one has some education, then you practice it. If you're training to be a teacher or training to be a doctor, then you don't just retire after coming out of college. You take on that profession.
That's why there's a saying called "talk is cheap," and that's why nobody's rich.
There's also, there's also a thought that every aspect of incarnations on all of the levels and species are all divine because they're all a reflection of Krishna. So you can look at it as negate, or you can say, it's also beautiful.
It's like, I was thinking, what Laura said probably reminds me of what I read in the Sea.
I'm going to get to that. As soon as I get done with this purport, I'm going to get to that. They're divine in the sense that they're all part of Krishna's energy, but we don't take instructions from the pigs in the street and the horses and the dogs. We can have a nice, friendly relationship with it. We don't take instruction from them. We take instruction from people who are really well-trained and educated and are living the Christian conscious philosophy. Like I said, talk is cheap. People can say all sorts of things, and people do say all sorts of things. But how are they actually living their life, Okay, let me just get through this purport, and then we're going to get on with what Rajarani just suggested. Vedic injunctions affirm that only one who takes to devotional service, like we just read, that each and every word of this verse spoken by Arjuna is confirmed by Vedic injunctions. Okay? And Prabhupada's going to give us some references right here. In the Kena Upanishad, it is stated that Supreme Brahman is the rest for everything. And Krishna has already explained that everything is resting on him. The Mukunda Upanishad confirms that the Supreme Lord, in whom everything is resting, can be realized only by those who engage constantly in thinking of him. This constant thinking of Krishna is smartanam. Smartanam means remembering. Instead of remembering food or all the other stuff we put in our head, remember Krishna. Okay? One of the methods of devotional service. It is only by devotional service to Krishna that one can understand the position and get rid of his material body. That's an important concept. meaning we're not supposed to be in a material body that is limiting us and is bringing all sorts of pain and anxiety and suffering and frustrations, adiyatic, adidaivic, adibhotic miseries from our body, from our mind, from other living entities, from nature. No, we're eternal. We're in a misfit. We're a fish out of water right now. We're never going to be happy in this situation. So that's why we're saying to get rid of the material body the right way, which is to elevate to a spiritual body. Okay. In the Vedas, the Supreme Lord is accepted as the purest of the pure, one who understands that Krishna is the pure of the pure, or the purest of the pure, can become purified from all sinful activities. One cannot be disinfected from sinful activities unless he surrenders unto the Supreme Lord. Otherwise, we have what we witnessed at the Krishnamurti Foundation last Sunday with a guy who was a very, very accomplished. They introduced him as one of the leading half a dozen scholars in the world of consciousness and higher developed thought. And the subtitle of his lecture, this is a great one. This professor was secular religion. Okay? Think about that. That's like an oxymoron. It's like atheistic religion. Although not all people who are in the secular community are necessarily, there's a lot of agnostics out there.
What is secular mean?
Secular means just not somebody who doesn't believe in God.
Like atheism is
It could be, but it could also be people who are agnostic. It's not necessarily just atheist.
Okay.
I mean, it's just secular means anybody who doesn't necessarily have faith in a higher being. It's the way it's generally. So he's saying secular religion. Well, wait a minute. What's that? Or no, actually, excuse me. Not secular spirituality. He really destroyed the concept of religion, as if religion and spirituality can be broken apart. Okay, that's whole other discussion. Okay. But he doesn't surrender. And in fact, it was interesting because I think it was Hamsa Gati and Brajarani actually when he was done after I hit him with my question, then we had a little lunch later, and they went over there and they kind of came in as a tag team and started saying, well, if you admitted you can't ever figure it out, well, maybe there's a way of knowing that's beyond what you can do. And he was getting a little uncomfortable with that. And the last thing I heard him say as I walked up is he said, well, there may be a God, but I haven't seen him. And it's like, why? Because he hasn't surrendered. That's why.
Yeah.
He's still thinking he can figure it out with his little psychological tests and all of his pounding on his chest. And I've done this study and I've done that study and I'm very smart and I'm recognized all over the world as the leading authority on this topic. And I've come here to tell you that, we're going to have a secular religion. We don't need God to have spirituality. Okay.
What is his name?
Thomas Metzinger.
Thomas?
Metzinger. Okay, let's continue. Unless he surrenders to the Supreme Lord. Arjuna's acceptance of Krishna as a supreme pure complies with the injunctions of Vedic literature, meaning, again, he's in concurrence with, in this case, the literatures and also all the other sages who come to the same conclusion. This is also confirmed by the great personalities of whom Narada is the chief. There you go. Krishna is the supreme personality of Godhead, and one should always meditate on him and enjoy one's transcendental relationship with him. He is the supreme existence. He is free from the bodily needs, birth, and death. Another good point. None of us are in that position, whether we like it or not, or whether we want to be in denial about it or not. The fact of the matter is that I think everybody, unless you're really mentally insane, knows that at some point we're going to take our last breath and that's it. Then what happens? We're going to go somewhere else. What's that going to be determined by? It's going to be determined by what you're doing right now. Lord.
There's an issue with the surrender because in our culture, surrender means to lose.
No,
that's
you're not joining the side that's winning.
What's that?
Surrender means to join the side that's winning.
See, that's a good point.
Not necessarily the means.
That's a great point.
But he's showing but you're both right. Generally speaking, in the use of the word, when people hear surrender, they hear defeat. I'm defeating, but you have a really nice way of looking at it. Of course, if you're giving up the fight, Gary's insight is really wonderful, assuming you're surrendering to a conscious victor. I don't know if that would have been so good if you surrendered the Japanese in World War II.
Well, okay.
But
he's saying if you surrender to Krishna, it is joining him.
Yes.
Or
Yes.
my point is surrender means usurped by a lesser power.
Well, let's just summarize it like this. You're both right. The thing is that surrendering to something of this nature, everything in the material world is upside down. So normally, you're right, surrendering to the material world is considered, oh God, you're lost. Okay? But in this case, it's spiritual world. There's never any loss when you surrender in the spiritual world, especially to Krishna. In fact, any activity you have with Krishna will always end up being beneficial for you. Gabrielle.
You could look at surrender as letting go of the need to control, the need to...
That's another good way to look at it. In fact, that surrender is coming to the point where you actually admit and stop playing the game that everybody else is playing, which is, I got it under control. I know what I'm doing. No, if you don't have any insight, if you don't have advantage of this Vedic wisdom, guess what? You're just another one of these things that's in the grinding the machine of the material world. Miguel.
Actually, the word in Arabic and Muslim, which is mean Islam, this means surrender.
What is it?
Islam, this means surrender. The Muslim word, al-Islam.
Al-Islam.
It means surrender.
Oh, the word Islam.
Yeah, the
means
word
surrender.
surrender.
Very good.
It means surrender your ego, surrender.
Well, there you go.
But they still fight. They still.
That's the ideology that's
Kali Yuga coming in.
For a higher purpose.
Yeah, that's surrender your ego.
Right, but that's Castriya.
Huh?
Yeah, but you actually, no, for everyone, we actually free ourselves from that battle against Maya.
You get free when you surrender.
Right.
It's actually freedom. This surrender actually frees you from the struggle.
From the struggle of having to keep on the pretense of that I'm so important and I'm so wonderful and I'm so significant, when in fact you're really not until you surrender, and then you actually become significant. Because now you're actually contributing to making the world a better place instead of just contributing to perpetuating the illusion.
Okay, so warriors, Kshatriyas, who are surrendered unto Krishna, Krishna will still send them into a holy war.
The point is that the conditions of life are still going to be there. You're going to approach them a whole different way. So yeah, the Kshatriya's duty is still going to be there. But the thing is, when you know you're an eternal soul, and if you're a Kshatriya, what's the big deal? Just turn the page. Let's get on with the next chapter. And it's not just something you say. It's something you live. You breathe it. You know it. You're not worried about it.
And this is not just a war that's happening. This is a very serious event. This is affecting all of everything that's going on during this period of time.
Right.
So unfortunately, gratefully, it had happened, so we have this information.
Right. You're either part of the solution or you're part of the problem. I mean, it's just so.
And the saddest part was Arjuna was looking at his own. The people on the other side, they were his relatives.
That makes it even more poignant. Okay, let me finish the purport. We're getting a little dragged out.
Ahead of ourselves.
Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and one should always meditate upon Him and enjoy one's transcendental relationship with Him. He is the Supreme Existence. He is freed from bodily needs, birth, and death. Not only does Arjuna confirm this, but all the Vedic literature, the Puranas, and histories. In all Vedic literature, Krishna is thus described as the Supreme Lord Himself. Also says in the fourth chapter, although I am unborn, and I appear on this earth to establish religious principles. He is the supreme origin, and He has no cause, for He is the cause of all causes, and everything is emanating from Him. The perfect knowledge can be had by the grace of the Supreme Lord. Okay, this is the end of it. Here Arjuna expresses himself through the grace of Krishna. If we want to understand Bhagavad Gita, we should accept the statements of these two verses. This is called the Parampara system. You can accept or you can reject. So you can continue to do what you're doing, or you can say, makes a little sense to me. Maybe I should start doing this a little more. This is called the Parampara system, acceptance of the disciplic succession. Unless one is in the disciplic succession, this is another important point right here. There's a lot of people, and I meet these people, a lot of them go out of the way to meet me, in fact, and they read books, and they've read some Upanishads, or they've got some compilation of the Vedas, and they might have read parts of the Bhagavad Gita, but they don't have this disciplic succession. I know it sounds terribly elitist, but there's a science to this. If you don't have this disciplic succession, you're not going to get the inside understanding of what's happening here, and you're going to be going back into the cave of your mind trying to figure out some of the. I mean, I'm a good example of it. I read the Bhagavad Gita the first time I read it. I read Christopher Isherwood's Bhagavad Gita. It's about a little tiny paperback like this, and I read it. And I said, "Oh man, this is some weird story about somebody killing his family. It doesn't sound religious to me." And then I was offered one of these books right here. There's no little penguin 78-page paperback. This is practically 1,000 pages. And I went, whoa. And Devotee shows me, he said, you want to understand the Bhagavad Gita? You got to make the effort. You get what you pay for, right? Or in this case, you get what you're willing to do. And I didn't like to read. This was like, to me, it was like, oh my God, I'll die before I read that whole book. But something in me said, no, you're going to start with page 1. And you're going to read every word from page 1 to the end of the index. I just somehow or another, I just said, I'm going to, because I knew there was something in here, and I knew I missed it the first time around. And then by the time, in the beginnings, I don't know how many people have worked their way through our Bhagavad Gita, but the first, the introduction is like 70 pages, and oh God, this long introduction. And it was interesting, but it was like, get on with the story, man. I want to understand. And then the first chapter is filled with, all the great people on the battlefield. They're all lined up in their bows, and they're all conch shells, and the flags are going, and the drums are beating. And come on, get on with the story. I couldn't even read the names of all these people. There were 5-syllable names. Forgetting all of them as fast as I'm reading them. And then, and then finally I hit chapter 2. Where it says that verse where I just quoted a minute ago, Natu evam chatunashtam natam nemi janagipad nakabai napavishima sarve vayam vatapara. That Krishna is telling Arjuna while he's sitting there going, whoa, he's saying, never was there a time when I, being Krishna in this case, did not exist, nor you, nor all these kings that are arrayed, you can't see it so much in this illustration, but all the kings that are on the battlefield, nor in the future shall any of us cease to be. Even if you die in this battlefield, you're not ending at that point. You're an eternal soul. And I was going like, whoa.
Heavy, eh?
I never heard anybody talk like this before. Or if they did, I certainly wasn't paying attention. But this got my attention. So let me just finish this, and then we're going to get on with our dinner tonight. So let me just finish this. So that's the Parampara system. That's the difference. Because I got it from somebody who was living the Bhagavatam. Not just a scholar who's making a living translating Sanskrit, and then he goes out and has a beer with his friends and watches football for the weekend. There's a big difference. Prabhupada lived this philosophy. He was certainly qualified to talk about it. Unless one gets into the succession, you cannot understand Bhagavad Gita. It is not possible by so-called academic education. We saw a good example of that last weekend at the Krishna Foundation. Unfortunately, those proud of their academic education, despite so much evidence in Vedic literature, stick to their obstinate conviction that Krishna is an ordinary person. Or even worse, he's just a literary vehicle to tell this wonderful analogy about your life. That Krishna didn't even exist. Or if you're a priest from Malibu Temple, you are Krishna. Ooh.
And come to our
Okay, let me just one more thing here, and then we're going to break. Rajarani was reading, we were reading together the other night, the Chaitanya Charitamrita, and she read something, and I said, whoa, I think it's important for you guys to read this, or I'm going to read it to you real quick. It's very short. This is the introduction to the Chaitanya Charitamrita, which we've talked about many times. It's the golden book. This is the advanced class in Krishna consciousness. Okay? Hear what Prabhupada says. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, of course that's Lord Chaitanya, who's the picture behind the one we just covered up here. It's Krishna appearing as his own devotee. informs us that in every country and in every scripture there is some hint of love of Godhead. And this is what makes Christian consciousness completely different than pretty much all the other traditions that I'm aware of, unless you're a Unitarian, Universalist, or whatever they go by. Most of these other traditions usually say, hey, this is what we believe, you either believe it with us or you're out of luck. We don't say that here, and Prabhupada's going to make this point. And in every scripture there is some hint of love of God. But no one knows what love of God actually is. Nobody knows what love of Godhead actually is, thank you. The Vedic scriptures, however, are different in that they can direct the individuals in the proper way to love God. Other scriptures do not give information on how one can love God, nor do they actually define or describe what or who the Godhead actually is. So what he's saying is we have no objection to the Christians, we have no objection to Islam, we have no objection to any bona fide religious process, and if it satisfies you, then fine.
Sometimes people get different
Pursue
degrees.
It. Yeah, they get to different degrees of interest, and different degrees. Your questions only are going to get answered so far. What Prabhupada's saying here is that if you want to go really deeply into the origin of the universe, or the nature of the soul, or what it means to love God, and who God actually is, not just some white light or some big father at the Sistine Chapel with a big long beard, touching Adam and boom, everything's just happening. No. If you really want to know who God is, you're only going to find that in the Vedic literatures. And we're not saying that, again, in a pejorative way. It's just a fact. Show me where it talks about what God looks like in the Bible or in the Quran. I haven't seen it. I'm ready to be taught, but I haven't seen it.
There's a sidebar about the Bible. It's the King James Bible. Everything that Jesus said is in red. So it's really pure.
Anyhow, that's called the Red Line Bible. That's.
But it's good.
Yeah, okay, that's nice. If people are interested in that information, it's there. Yeah, that's fine. Anyhow, I think there's another sentence here. Other scriptures do not give information on how to love God, nor do they actually define and describe what or who God actually is, although they officially promote love of Godhead. Great, we're all for it. They have no idea how to execute it. I had an opportunity once to actually take a minister of one of the churches here to breakfast one time. It was about 20 years ago. And I sat down and talked to him. And he said one of the biggest problems, one of the most common things that people in his congregation come to him about all the time is got something to do with some form of intoxication. Either drug abuse, liquor abuse, or gambling. And he said he just wished he could somehow get them to realize these aren't good. Well, guess what? Here we come right out and say it. Those aren't going to be good for you, folks. You might want to steer away from that. Okay. Describe what and who God actually, although officially promote God. They have no idea how to execute it, but Chaitanya Mahaprabhu gives a practical demonstration of how to love God in a conjugal relationship. And then it goes on here to talk about that relationship with Srimati Radharani, which was the prayer we read right here. What's being referenced here. So we're running a little bit over. I'm going to stop here. We're going to do the Prasadam prayer. And then we can have some questions and answers maybe during Prasadam if you like. Most of you have been here and you know what the program is. Let's get this a little bigger. Oops. And we'll say this, and then we will go on. And thank you for your patience. I think we had a lot of you made comments tonight. Everybody seems to be on the same page in terms of understanding what we're trying to do, so I appreciate that. If I cut you off, I didn't mean to be rude. It's just we try to cover a lot of material. So please follow along with this. Sarirara vijjajal jatendriya teka jive phale vasaya sagare dharma jay vivayati lovamoya sadharmati take jeta katina samsare Krishna Badadaya Mai Kari Bada Jiva Joy Swapashad and Adila Bhai Sanamrita Radha Krishna Gunagal Primidako Jaini Maini Tai. Okay, who would like to read the English tonight?
I will.
Great.
O Lord, this material body has a love of ignorance, And the senses are a network of paths to death. Somehow we have fallen into this ocean of material sense enjoyment. In all of these senses, the tongue is the most voracious and uncontrollable. It is very difficult to conquer the tongue in this world. But you, dear Krishna, are very kind to us and have given us such nice prasadam just to control the tongue. Now we take the prasadam for our full satisfaction to glorify the lordship of Sri Radha Krishna and in the love call for the help of Lord Chaitanya and Lord Nityananda
Bhaktivinoda Thakur. Good. Thank you, Harry. Okay. Are we ready to go out there, Bhadrani? Okay. So, again, thank you all for your patience. It was a little long tonight. It's chock full of interesting stuff.
Thank you.
And when you're done, if you can afford to stick around and just help put a few things away, that's always appreciated. Another thing that we were discussing, I don't know how many people were here, but we were discussing